The Riddle of the Overseer. There are different theories about destiny. One says that destiny is the same as fate, that it is predetermined. No matter how much you try, you can't escape it. On the one hand, this interpretation seems hopeless because if your destiny is not one of the better ones, then there's no hope for improvement. On the other hand, there are always people who are content with this state of affairs because it's comforting when the future is more or less predictable, when it doesn't scare you with uncertainty. But for some people, the idea of not being able to escape their destiny evokes feelings of discontent and inner protest. They feel cheated, out of luck, and they start complaining. Why is life so unfair? One person has everything in excess, while another is constantly in need. Everything comes easy to one person, while another runs round and round like a mouse in a wheel getting nowhere. One person is gifted with beauty, intelligence, and strength, whereas another, unaware of what sin he is paying for, is labeled a second-class citizen his entire life. Why this injustice? Why does life, with its infinite variety, put limitations on certain people? Why are less fortunate people at fault? A deprived person feels resentment and tries to find an explanation for why things are the way they are. Then all kinds of teachings appear, like the ones that say you have bad karma and are paying for terrible sins committed in past lives. Other teachings try to explain why inequalities exist in the world and try to give hope by promising compensation to those who are suffering and in need. But these teachings also say that you will be rewarded somewhere in heaven or in another life. And no matter how you look at it, none of these explanations is satisfying, and it is not important whether your past and future lives exist or not, because you are aware of and remember only this life. In this sense, it is your only life. If you believe that fate is predetermined, then the only way to avoid depression is to surrender and accept your fate as it is. After all, the experts say you were unhappy because you were always dissatisfied due to wanting too much. That the only way to be happy is to be happy, that you need to take joy in life. So you agree, even though it doesn't quite work. But you still wonder, is there really something wrong with wanting more out of life? Why force myself to be happy when I'm not? It's just as impossible as forcing myself to love. Meanwhile, you're surrounded by so-called enlightened individuals who are busy calling for universal love and forgiveness. If you want to avoid harsh reality, you can put this illusion over your head like a blanket, and sure enough, you'll feel a little better. But deep down inside, you still don't fully understand why you should be forgiving people you hate or loving those you are indifferent to. What's the use? After all, it isn't natural happiness, it's forced happiness, as if joy, instead of coming to you by itself, needs to be squeezed out of you like toothpaste. Of course, some people aren't satisfied with the idea that life, their fate, is simply predetermined. They prefer to take joy in their achievements. For them, there is another concept of fate, that man forges his own happiness, that he must struggle to achieve happiness. To them, how could it be any other way? Smart people say that nothing comes easy, and it seems like an irrefutable fact. If you don't want to accept your life as it is, then you need to elbow your way to your own happiness. History also tells us how bravely heroes fight and how they sacrifice themselves day and night, overcoming unimaginable obstacles. Those who win the battle are rewarded, but only after enduring tremendous burdens and loss. But that's not the whole story, because millions of people fight and toil, but only a handful actually succeed. Which means that you can waste your entire life in a desperate struggle for a place in the sun all in vain. Is life that cruel? Is everything really so hopeless? The truth is that there is a way out, and it is simple because it is found on another level of existence. According to Transurfing, destiny is based on an entirely different view of the world. If you decide that fate is predetermined, something you are not in a position to change, then it will be that way. In that case, you willingly put your life into someone else's hands. You turn into a little paper boat that follows the waves of the sea, bending to their will. If, on the other hand, you believe that you shape your destiny, then you consciously take responsibility for everything that happens in your life. You struggle against the waves, trying to take control of your little boat. Keep in mind that your choice is always made into reality. What you choose is what you get. Whichever worldview you adopt, it will be the right one. At the same time, other people will disagree and argue with you simply because they are also right in whatever worldview they adopt. If you take any phenomenon in our reality and make it your point of reference, you can create an entire field of science. This field would have no contradictions in it and would successfully reflect one manifestation of reality. To create an entire knowledge system like a field of science, it's enough to take a couple of facts that don't have to be fully understood, but which nonetheless have a place in the system. For example, quantum physics is based on several improvable truths called postulates. They cannot be proved because they are the initial points of reference of quantum physics. In quantum physics, a micro-object can act as a particle in some cases and as a wave in others. Scientists cannot interpret such dualism, so they simply accept that this is the way things are. The postulates of quantum physics can accommodate the immense variety of shapes and forms through which our reality is manifested. Three blind men can then agree that an elephant sometimes behaves as a pole and sometimes as a snake. If we choose to see a micro-object as a particle, we get a model of the atom first conceived by the famous physicist Niels Bohr. In that model, electrons revolve around the nucleus much as planets revolve around the sun. If, on the other hand, we take a wave as the micro-object's fundamental characteristic, then the atom looks like a blurred stain. Both models work, they just reflect different ways that reality can manifest. By its nature, the world is a whole, yet it is always taking on different appearances. As we try to explain one appearance, another enters and contradicts the first. Scientists try to unite different manifestations of reality so that contradictions can be removed. However, that is extremely hard to do. There is only one fact that is not subject to doubt, a fact that is able to unite and reconcile all branches of knowledge and the immense variety of forms through which reality can appear to us. This one fact is that the diversity of variations is the foremost and fundamental quality of our world. By trying to explain separate manifestations, different schools of thought avoid the fact of the multiplicity of variations. They treat multiplicity as the beginning of the story, the point of origin, and they regard any branches of knowledge are secondary to it. But no one bothers with the point of origin, as it contains no information. But oh yes, it does. It contains the most incredible information. We will use the multiplicity of variations as our starting point to solve the riddle of the overseer in my dream. We will see that reality can manifest in an infinite number of ways. And despite the general nature of this claim, we will find that it reveals interesting and unexpected knowledge. Let's start with the fact that all forms through which reality manifests must have an origin, a place where the multitude of variations exists. Where are the laws of our world recorded? The world reveals itself as matter moving through space and time, and moving matter is subject to certain laws. If we distribute points on a graph according to a mathematical formula, we could say that the movement of a point along the graph is governed by a defined function. However, the formulas and laws are just abstract inventions of our minds, created to facilitate our understanding and explain what we perceive with our senses. It's highly unlikely that nature is keeping these formulas and laws hidden somewhere. How else can we fix points on a graph? Well, we can store the coordinates for each point, which is already a problem because there is an infinite number of them. Our memory is only so big and cannot handle such a massive amount of information. But to nature, infinity is not a problem. There is no need for nature to map the location or movement of points on a graph by using a formula. If we break up a linear function into an infinite number of small points, then each point can be a cause and each consecutive point can be an effect. Thus, the movement of any material point in space and time can be seen as an infinitely long and continuous chain of infinitely small causes and effects. Science uses laws to represent the motion of matter, while nature houses this motion in its pure form, as an infinite number of causes and effects. Broadly speaking, data about every possible material object and its path along the infinite number of points is stored in a field of information that we will refer to as the space of variations. This space of variations contains information about everything that was, is, and will be. The space of variations is an informational structure with a material basis. It contains all possible variations of any event that could take place. We can say that the space of variations contains all information. Even though our minds don't know exactly how this information is preserved, the essential thing to remember is that the space of variations works as a template, a coordinate network for moving matter through space and time. Each point in the space of variations contains its own variations of a particular event. To make this easier to understand, imagine that a variation consists of a script and decorations. The script is the path along which matter is transported, while decorations represent the external view or form that manifests as reality. The space of variations can also be divided into sectors, with each sector having its own script and decorations. The more space between sectors, the greater the differences in scripts and decorations. In this scheme, a multitude of variations represents your destiny. Theoretically, there are no limits to the number and types of scripts and decorations that can exist in a person's life. This is because the space of variations is infinite. The least significant event could have an impact on your destiny. Your life is just like any other transportation of matter. It is nothing but a chain of causes and effects. In the space of variations, cause and effect are closely linked. One follows the other, and the sectors of your destiny form a life track. The scripts and decorations on a track are more or less the same. Your life flows evenly in one direction until an event takes place that changes the scripts and decorations. Destiny then takes a turn, and you start moving along a different life track. Imagine that you've been watching a play. You go back to the theater the next day to see the same play, yet this time it is performed with different decorations. The two plays you've seen are life tracks close to each other in the space of variations. On a third day, you watch the same actors, but this time with a different script. This life track is farther from the one you saw in the first two plays. The same play could also run in a different theater, and you would therefore experience a new interpretation of the play, on a life track farther from the first three. Reality manifests itself in all its multiplicity precisely because the number of variations is infinite. Any point of origin can flow into the chain of causes and effects. Based on the point of origin you choose, you get a corresponding manifestation of reality. In effect, reality unfolds along a life track depending on the selected point of origin. Everyone gets what he or she chooses. You have the right to choose just because the infinity of variations already exists. No one prevents you from selecting whichever destiny you want. Mastering your destiny comes down to one simple thing: making a choice. And transurfing gives you the answer to the question of how to make that choice.